All right, let's jump right into one of the most fun, most vibrant comedies to ever hit the Elizabethan stage. We're talking about a play so popular it got a command performance for Queen Elizabeth I herself. This is Thomas Dekker's The Shoemaker's Holiday.
And right from the get-go, you know exactly what this play is all about just by looking at the dedication. It isn't for the fancy courtiers or the stuffy scholars. Nope, it's for all good fellows. You know, the artisans, the craftsmen, the real people whose lives are the absolute heart of the story. And wow, what a story it is. They called it a merry, conceited comedy, which is just a fantastic old-timey way of saying it was a clever, hilarious play. And it was a total sensation. I mean, it was so big that it got performed for the Queen during the Christmas season of 1599. Think about that. This was a certified royal hit, praised for its mirth and pleasant matter. Okay, so here's our plan. We're going to break down the two amazing storylines that are woven together so beautifully in this play. First, we'll meet the absolutely unforgettable shoemaker, Simon Eyre. Then, we'll follow a young nobleman who's willing to give up, well, everything for love. We'll dive right into the crazy, vibrant world of his workshop and see how this all builds to a truly incredible legacy. All right, first up, let's meet the guy who is without a doubt the heart and soul of this play. The larger-than-life Simon Eyre.
So who is this Simon Eyre guy? Well, picture this. He's a boisterous, super witty, and just incredibly ambitious shoemaker. And get this, he's actually based on a real historical figure, a guy who really did climb the ladder back in 15th century London. He just perfectly captures the spirit of the city's working class, so much so that critics back then called him a clever portrait, one drawn straight from nature. Oh, and his language. It's just electric. He's always shouting these wonderfully inventive, rambling speeches. I mean, when he wants people to just get to the point, he doesn't say, "Be quiet." No way. He bellows, "Away with your pishery-poshery." Can you even imagine? It's just pure comedic gold. And all of this, all that energy, it all points to his one driving ambition. See, Eyre's not content just being a shoemaker. Not even close. His dream is to climb the social ladder and become the Lord Mayor of London. We're talking the most powerful job in the entire city. So, while Simon Eyre is busy trying to climb up the social ladder, we've got another story brewing, and this one's about a young nobleman who's about to climb down. All for love. And here's the central dilemma, laid out perfectly. You've got Roland Lacy, a nobleman, who is head over heels for Rose, the daughter of the current Lord Mayor. Sounds great, right? Well, here's the problem. Both of their families are absolutely dead set against them getting together. And why? You guessed it, class difference. And this really gets to the absolute heart of the class divide at the time. On one side, you have Lacy's uncle, the Earl, who's just completely dismissive. He basically says, "Poor citizens must not with courtiers wed." End of story. But Lacy, he sees things totally differently. He's so determined to be with Rose that he sees real dignity in an honest day's work. And he believes the gentle craft of shoemaking is a perfectly honorable way to live. So what does Lacy do? He comes up with this absolutely wild plan. First, he totally defies his uncle's orders to go fight in the war in France. He basically dodges the draft. Then, he puts on a disguise as a Dutch shoemaker named Hans, and where does he go? He gets himself hired in the one place that'll put him right in the thick of it, close to Rose, Simon Eyre's shop. And this, right here, is where our two storylines smash right into each other, inside the bustling, chaotic, and absolutely hilarious world of Simon Eyre's shoemaker's shop. But wait, why do they call it the gentle craft? This is actually a really fascinating bit of history. The trade of shoemaking was considered, well, noble, because its patron saints, Crispin and Crispianus, were supposedly princes who worked as shoemakers in secret. So this backstory gave the whole profession this unique air of dignity and honor. Pretty cool, huh? And this shop is just filled with an amazing cast of characters. You've got Marjorie, Eyre's wife, who's every bit as ambitious as he is. You have his journeymen, Hodge, Firk, and Rafe, this fiercely loyal trio he calls his mad Cappadocians. And then there's Rafe's wife, Jane, whose story brings a really touching, kind of sad note to all the comedy. You know, the dialogue in these scenes is just so authentic, it feels like you're right there. It's overflowing with the slang, the inside jokes, the raw energy of a real Elizabethan workshop. The language is so dense and so vivid, it honestly feels like you've been time warped right into the middle of 16th century London.
But, it's not all just fun and games. This play has some real heart, and it creates a world that can feel both painful and funny at the same time. And you see this most clearly in the subplot with Rafe, one of Ayer's journeymen. He gets drafted into the army, and when he comes back from the war, he's been seriously injured. So Rafe is back at work in the shop, trying to get on with his life, when a servant comes in. The servant needs a pair of shoes made for a gentlewoman who's getting married the very next morning. He hands Rafe a single shoe to use as a pattern, and he says those shoes are for his bride. And this is the moment where everything just stops. As Rafe looks at the shoe, a horrifying realization starts to dawn on him. He recognizes this shoe. He knows this shoe. He says, "This was the very shoe I gave my wife. It was the parting gift he made for his beloved Jane right before he left for the war." In that instant, he realizes his wife, thinking he's dead, is about to marry someone else. So with all this going on, the ambition, the secret love, the tragic loss, the mistaken identities, how on earth does it all come together? Well, it all culminates in this big, triumphant celebration of the common person. Okay, first off, Simon Ayer, he actually does it. He achieves his dream. Through a wild mix of good luck and just sheer force of personality, he literally rockets up the social ladder. He goes from a humble shoemaker to sheriff, and then, finally, all the way to Lord Mayor of London. He gets so powerful, he even hosts a banquet for the king himself. Incredible. And the first thing he does as Lord Mayor, he jumps right into our other storyline. He brings the two young lovers, Lacey and Rose, directly before the king. And when the snooty Earl objects, the king himself delivers this beautiful judgment, declaring that love respects no blood, it doesn't care about birth or status, and he gives the couple his royal blessing. But maybe Ayer's greatest act is what he does for his own people. He uses his new influence to get a royal decree that every single Shrove Tuesday, as soon as the pancake bell rings, all the apprentices in London get to close up their shops and take the day off. He literally creates a permanent holiday, a day of celebration, just for the working class. So in the end, what is the Shoemaker's Holiday? Is it just a merry, conceited, fun little comedy? Or is it something more? I think it's a truly timeless and joyful story, one that celebrates the dignity of a hard day's work, the power of community, and maybe most of all, the simple idea that a good heart is worth way more than a noble name. Long before we had social media beefs and viral takedowns, rivalries were settled in a much more poetic way. Today, we're going to talk about what might just be the world's first diss track, a 400-year-old play designed to absolutely destroy someone's reputation. So picture this, it's 1601. You're a famous writer in London, and one of your rivals publicly roasts you and your work. What do? Well, you can't fire off a nasty tweet. No, you write an entire play to humiliate them, and then you have it performed for the whole city to see. And that is exactly what happened. The answer to our question lies in a play called Satriomastix, which is basically a masterclass in literary revenge performed live on stage over 400 years ago. Okay, so the play is Satriomastix, and it was written by a guy named Thomas Dekker, way back in 1601. But you've got to understand, this wasn't just another night at the theater. This was a weapon. It was a carefully crafted missile aimed at one specific person. And honestly, the full title tells you everything you need to know. The Untrusting of the Humorous Poet. In their slang, untrusting literally meant to undress someone, to expose them. And the humorous poet? Oh, that was a very specific, not-so-subtle dig at a famous rival's signature style. So the title's basically a public threat. I'm about to expose this guy for the fraud he is. Yeah, not subtle at all. But see, Dekker's play didn't just come out of nowhere. It was a major battle in a much bigger conflict, a beef that historians now call the War of the Theaters. The fancy term for it is poetomachia, which literally means a war of poets. And it was exactly what it sounds like, a nasty, public feud where London's biggest writers used the stage as their battlefield. And the stakes, they were huge. This wasn't just about egos. It was about money, getting gigs with rich patrons, and of course, selling tickets. They were trading insults right there in their plays, right in front of everyone. Now, every good beef needs someone to start it, right? And in this case, the guy who threw the first punch was one of the most famous and, let's be honest, famously arrogant playwrights of the time, Ben Jonson. So let's meet our main players. On one side, you've got Ben Jonson, the provocateur. He's the one who starts this whole thing with his play, The Poetaster, making him our humorous poet. And on the other side, we've got Thomas Dekker, the guy who claps back with Satriomastix, positioning himself as the untresser, the one who's going to do the exposing. So in the spring of 1601, Ben Jonson's play, The Poetaster, opens. And it's not just a story, it's a full-on attack. Jonson packs it with characters that are really thin, really nasty parodies of other writers he didn't like. And who was he aiming at? Well, his two main targets were a playwright named John Marston and, you guessed it, Thomas Dekker. Jonson basically painted them as talentless, pretentious hacks. He threw the first punch, and he threw it hard. Jonson probably walked away from that thinking he'd won, but he seriously underestimated Thomas Dekker. Because Dekker was about to serve up one of the most savage comebacks in literary history, the untrusting he promised. Dekker's countermove was frankly brilliant. He writes his play Satriomastix and creates a character named Horace, and absolutely everyone in that audience knew exactly who Horace was supposed to be, Ben Jonson. And Dekker did not pull any punches. As one scholar puts it, the character of Horace, Jonson, is portrayed as a desperate social climber, a coward, and just a fundamentally dishonest person. So Dekker wasn't just making fun of Jonson's writing. He was attacking his character, his very soul, live on stage for the whole world to see. But here's the absolute genius part. Dekker took characters that Jonson himself had created in The Poetaster, including the ones meant to mock him, and just dropped them right into his play. Then he had Jonson's own characters turn on the Jonson stand-in, Horace, and tear him apart. It was this incredible move of literary jujitsu, using Jonson's own momentum against him. Just stunning. And the brilliance of that move brings us to the final and maybe the most impressive part of this whole story, the insane speed of Dekker's response. It was so fast, in fact, it created a mystery that scholars are still arguing about today. Just look at this timeline. Jonson's play comes out in the spring. That means Dekker had to see it, get furious, come up with this whole brilliant concept, write a full 5-act play loaded with clever satire, get it cast, rehearsed, and unstaged by the fall. We know it was officially registered in November. That kind of turnaround for such a detailed response is, well, it's almost impossible. The speed was so unbelievable, it led people to ask a pretty simple question. Did he do it all by himself? I mean, could one person really write something that complex, that fast? Well, the leading theory is that Dekker had a secret co-writer, John Marston. Remember him? He was the other guy Jonson attacked in his play. It makes total sense, right? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. While it's a really good theory, there's just no concrete proof. So we're left with this awesome, unsolved literary mystery. So who really won? Jonson definitely had the ego and fired the first shot. But Dekker had the speed, the cleverness, and that genius move of turning an attack right back on its source. It really makes you wonder, if this all went down today with Twitter threads and instant replies, who do you think would have actually won the War of the Theaters?